So let's first take a look at some of these contour line examples. I'm going to try and find some that's mainly just ink. Okay, so if you look, oh, this is a not very clear picture. But if you look at the contour lines, is it just like a straight line going around? I just took a marker and just went like in a circle. Or are there a bunch of little tiny texture lines? How about these? Does that look like just a random line? No, I mean it's going in kind of a line. But if you look at the tiny little textures, they're creating kind of contours, but in a way of making it look like hair using texture. Okay, so for example, let me pull up this one and see if it's easier to see. I feel like this one's a little easier to see. So for example, look right here, okay? There's not just like a solid line going across. It's just a bunch of hair going in the direction that the hair was going into, okay? Nothing is a solid line. It's just a bunch of little texture lines, okay? So we are going to begin by doing that with our pictures, okay? So, for example, if you look at my dog, this is not just one solid line. If you see, it's kind of a little bit bumpy here. The ears definitely have some long little hairs and stuff going. So let me show you how I would typically do this, and I'm going to start here. So you guys aren't drawing anything yet. You're just going to watch for a second, okay? So I'm going to start in D3, okay? So with my pencil, very lightly, D3. If you look at D3, it almost starts kind of right in the middle. And remember, I always pay attention to where these lines would intersect those lines. I need to brighten this up, apparently. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay, so if this is halfway, this is right above halfway. If this is halfway, this is a little below halfway. So I always look at where my contour lines are intersecting the grid, and I usually will draw those first. So D3, so a little bit above, a little bit below. Okay, we're not actually having to blow this up at all. We're just transferring a 1-inch grid to a 1-inch grid, okay? So then what I like to do is very lightly kind of draw a basic contour in here. This ear, do you guys see how it kind of goes? Whoop. So C4. This one is kind of hard because it's just real fluffy. So in here, I kind of sometimes will just draw the fluff. And then the rest of the ear kind of starts coming down. I like to try and get my picture as close to where I'm actually drawing, so it's kind of side by side. I find it a little bit easier. D4 in here. D4. Okay, it kind of goes right in through that little corner, and then it goes down. Anyway, so I kind of have some general contour lines, but if you look up here, you don't want to keep these solid lines. You want to give them texture, okay? So with my pen, when I do my pen, I'm going to look at the direction that the hair is going. And these little strokes that I'm making, this is what my ink will be. Okay? So you are simply just making these texture lines as your contour lines. So I have kind of a lot of little hairs coming out through here. Okay? So do you guys see how that contour line needs that texture? Okay? So you can start out with kind of a basic regular guideline and then go back over it with the texture lines. Does that make sense? Okay. The last thing I'm going to show you is a reminder of how you can break these up into smaller grids. Eyes, nose, all of those facial details, I often will divide these up into smaller grids. So I usually look at halfway. This pencil is sharpened super weird. And I will go down the middle, find halfway, which, guys, I would use a ruler. I'm eyeballing this, but 1/2 inch, okay? And then I would do the same thing to F5 on my paper, okay? So this is going right through the eye. This is going to help me draw this eye more proportionately, okay? Last but not least, something else I do, and I know this is really hard to see, especially up here. If I do that, that makes it a little bit easier to see the actual eyeball. But how many of you guys have some details that are like really dark? You can see them, but they're not super easy to see. Okay? What I often do is I often draw on this picture. Okay? Let me get a different pencil that's sharper. But what I often do here is I will take a pencil and real hard, I will go over some of these contour lines so that they're easier for me to see the shape of things, okay? I know you can't see this very well, but in the light, because it's graphite, it is shiny. The nose, like the nose little holes and stuff, like I might go over some of those. Some things are really just hard to see, so you're going to have to kind of draw them out to kind of fill them in. I do have a little chin here, a little jawline, and then I have the lips. I might have to actually look up my picture to see how the lip comes down from here, okay? So you guys might need to refer back to your actual photo, which means you might need your phone if that's what it's on. You don't need it, but if you would like it to just kind of see some of those details, obviously I will let you use it for that reason, but for that reason only, okay? So you don't want to leave out any of these details. You don't want so much texture that it is super dark. The only places you want lots of texture to where it would be dark is in the dark areas, okay, which you are welcome to do. But you mainly want to leave it just a contour line so that we can fill the inside with color. You want the essence of texture in there without just filling the whole animal with texture. Does that make sense? Okay. So let me just remind you. So for example, it's these pictures, these animals are pretty empty. They just mainly kind of have those texture lines. Pretty much empty texture lines, texture lines. This one is very empty. I think you could probably add a little more texture than some of these. But you want those texture lines to be more of like a hairy texture line. Okay, here's another example of one that I drew of just basic contour lines, but it's mainly empty. Okay, but if you look at all the little lines, it's not just a straight line. When you get to the ears, the hair was long, that some of them were kind of straight lines, but if you look at the bottom of the ears again, there's some spaces where the lines don't connect, and that's okay. Okay? So you are working on that texture contour line, and it might take a couple of days to get it done well. Okay, we are erasing our pencil, so remember to keep it light. We will be going over it in ink, and we want to erase all the pencil.